Hello all, welcome to the video lecture. This is Ramesh Lama. In this video, we'll be discussing about the big data and big data analytics. In our previous video, we discussed about the basic overview of big data and how it's being generated. Like we discussed about its characteristics, like its volume and its varieties, how it's being generated, like the speed of the generation of data and its sparsity, and lastly we also discuss about the how we can get the value or the value of big data. And in this video we'll be discussing about the how we will harness the big data using the big data analytics. And let's discuss about the big data analytics. It is just the science of examining raw data to reach certain conclusions. Like it involves examining the data to discover the patterns, correlations, insight, and trends. In other words, we can say that it involves examining the data set to gain the insight of the data or draw the conclusions about what they contain, or such as trends and predictions about the future activity. And without data analytics, the data is just a bunch of ones and zeros with limited business insight. So in order to harness the available data, we should go through the big data analytics. And there are certain reasons that why the big data analytics is useful. Or by applying big data analytics, companies can see benefits, and we can sort out the benefits in terms of like risk management and innovation in product, improved customer service, and better decision making in the organization. Let's see in detail with one by one. Like while talking about the risk management, it is the most frequently used big data applications, and these type of applications are predictive models to prevent the fraud and monitoring and analysis of the user behavior for the risk management. The big data analytics gives the companies the ability to look into the future, and it is being able to being seen, and it is being seen as an efficient way to mitigate the risk. Like you can see here an example of the Banco de Oro. It's a Philippines banking company. And this company uses the big data analytics, and it uses this big data analytics in order to identify the fraudulent activities and the discrepancies, like in order to identify the these fraudulent activities. And as it identifies the fraudulent activities using the big data analytics, the organizations was able to narrow down the list of suspects using the big data analytics. So in this way, the big data analytics can be used for the risk management. And another applications is the use of this big data analytics in innovations in product. Like in current era of the business, the innovations are crucial for the success of any business organization. And to innovate, we need to have lots of data, or any company or any organizations need to have more and more data. And the big data analytics is used by various firms to create the new products and the services for their customers. And companies, through the big data analytics, they analyze different customers' opinions about their products and how their products is perceived. And the big data is the driving force behind the ever recent IoT, like Internet of Things innovations. and it serves as a backbone to the IoT we have discussed in our previous class. And here is an example, like the Rolls-Royce, one of the manufacturer of massive jet engines, and these engines are used by the airlines and armed forces across the world. And this company uses the big data analytics to use how good the engine design is, and if there has to be any more improvement. And it uses the big data analytics in designing a product of the higher quality. And there are other examples like the Netflix for the video streaming. They also uses the recommendation engine. Similarly, we can see the Amazons, those are also using the recommendation engines. And we can see some kind of smart cars, they are that we have discussed in our previous class. Those all of those stuffs uses the big data for the innovation in the product. And another one is for the customer satisfaction, and big data can be used to understand the variety of customers, centric factors like what the customers want, the solutions to their problem, and analyzing their needs according to the market trends are taken into account for better decisions or better for the better customer service. And in this way we can any firm or any business firm can increase the customer satisfaction. Like you can see here another example, like the Delta Airlines, which uses the analysis to improve the customer experience. How it does is like they monitor the tweets to find out their customers' experience regarding the journey, their delays, and so on. And the airline identifies the negative tweets and does the needful by upgrading the customer tickets for the next journey if it is found out to be the airline's fault. And this helps the airlines to build the good customer relations. And the next one is for the decision making. Like the big data analytics is can be used for the boosted it can be used for boosting the decision making process to solve to some great extent. Like rather than anonymously making some decisions, companies are considering the big data analyzing before concluding to any decisions. So we can see here like the Starbucks uses big data analytics for the important decisions. For example, big data analytics is used to decide if a particular location would be suitable for new outlet or not. How they do is like the analysis is done based on the factors such as the population demographics, accessibility of the location, competition in the vicinity, the economic factors, parking adequacy, and so on. And the business grows if the right location is chosen wisely by considering the other parameters. Like if we have the data, like if we perform some big data analytics on the different parameters like the location, demographics, economic factors, parking adequacy, and so on, that will definitely boost the business. And these were the benefits of using the big data analytics. Now let's discuss about the life cycle of the big data analytics now, like how the big data analytics life cycle begins, like how it operates. Like it starts with the it is performed on different it is done on different steps. And it starts with the business case evaluation. Like before any big data project can be started, it needs to be clear like what is the business objectives and results of the data analysis should be. The initial phase focuses on understanding the project objectives and requirements from a business perspective, and then converting this knowledge into the determining problem definition. So it begins with the business case and it defines the reason and the goal behind the analysis. And the second step is the data identification. Like here the data this stage determines the origin of data. Like before data can be analyzed, it is important to know what the source of the data will be. And this stage of big data life cycle is very important, because if the input data is unreliable, the output data will also be unreliable, or we don't expect a good result with some incorrect we cannot expect the correct result with the incorrect input data. Thus identifying a wider variety of data source may increase the probability of finding the hidden patterns and the correlations. So we go for the broad varieties of sources. Like we try to identify the broad varieties of the source data sources. And another step is the data acquisition and filtering. Here the data acquisition and filtering phase builds up the previous stage of the big data lifecycle. And this stage, the data is gathered from the different sources, both from within the company and from the outside the company. And what it does is, after the acquisition, first step of filtering is conducted to filter out the corrupted data. And additionally, the data that is not necessary for the analysis is also filtered out. And the filtering step will be applied on each data source individually, so before the data is aggregated into the data warehouse. So in this case, we sort out, or we just we filter the corrupted and the unnecessary data, or some kind of repeated data. And the fourth step is the data extraction. Here what we do is, the sum of the data identified in previous two stages may be incompatible with the big data tool or big data analysis tool that will perform the actual analysis. So in order to deal with this problem, the data extraction stage is dedicated to extracting the different data formats from data sets, for example data source, and transforming these into the format the big data tool is able to process and analyze. So it is just like transforming the data from one format to another format, so that it can be compatible for the analysis, or it can be compatible or can be processed by the big data tool. And the complexity of transformation is dependent on the big data tool that has been selected. So here we transform from one format to another format. And another one, the next step, the fifth step, is the data validation and cleansing. Here data that is invalid leads to invalid result. So in order to ensure only the appropriate data is analyzed, the data validation and cleansing stage of the big data cycle is required. And during this stage, data is validated against a set of predetermined conditions and rules in order to ensure the data is not corrupted or data is not invalid. Like for example of the validation, like for the validation, here what we can do would be to exclude all the persons that are older than the 100 years old. So since it is very unlikely that the data about these persons would be correct due to the physical constraint, we can remove this kind of, we can exclude this data. So this stage is designed to establish like often complex verification validation rules and removing any non-invalid data. So this is about the data validation and cleansing. And the Another stage, that is the sixth step, is the data aggregation and representation. Like the data may be spread across the multiple data sets that requiring the data set be joined to conduct the actual analysis. So in order to ensure only the correct data will be analyzed in the next stage, it might be necessary to integrate multiple data sets. So here what we do is the aggregation and representation stage is dedicated to integrate multiple data sets to arrive at the unified view. So what we do is data with the same fields across the different data sets are integrated and prepared for the next stage, which is the data analysis. And the next stage is the data analysis. Here what we do is this stage, like we perform some kind of analysis operations here, and this stage is dedicated to carrying out the actual analysis task. Like it runs the code or algorithm that makes the calculations that lead to the actual result. And data analysis can be it can be simple or really complex depending on the required analysis type. Like in this case, the actual value of the big data project will be generated, and if all the previous steps have been executed carefully, the results will be factual and correct. Like depending on the type of analytic result required, this stage can be simple as querying a data set to compute an aggregation for the comparison, or it can be challenging as combining data mining and complex statistical analysis techniques to discover the patterns and anomalies, or to generate the statistical or mathematical model to depict the relationships between the variables. Like here this is like here what we do is like we evaluate the data using the analytical and statistical tools to discover the useful information. So so this is the data analysis stage. And the next stage is the data visualization. And the ability to analyze the massive amounts of data and find useful insight is one thing. Communicating the results in a way that everybody can understand is something completely different. They are the completely different thing. So the visualization stage is dedicated to using data visualization techniques and tools to graphically communicate the analysis results for the effective interpretation by the business users. So frequently this requires plotting the data points in charts, graphs, or maps. So the results of completing the data visualization stage provides users with the ability to perform visual analysis, allowing for the discovery to answers to the questions that users haven't yet formulated. And the final stage is like in the step 9 is the utilization of the analysis results. After we perform all those steps, the data analysis has been performed. Like after the data analysis has been performed, the result have been presented, and the final step of the big data analytics lifecycle is to use the result in the practice. So the utilization of analysis results is dedicated to determining the how and where the processed data can be further utilized to leverage the result of the big data project. And depending on the nature of analysis problems being addressed, it is possible for the analysis results to provide the models that encapsulate the new insights and the understanding about the nature of the patterns and relationships that exist within the data that was analyzed. And a model a model may look like a mathematical equation or set of rules The models can be used to improve the business process logic and application system logic, and they can form the basis of the new system or the software program. So like in summary, the final result is made available to the business stakeholder for the final decision making. So it's all about the big data analytics and its benefits and the and its life cycle. And in our next video we'll be discussing about the different types of big data analytics.